Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. A reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review our show. I'm your host, Wayne Blue, and today I'm joined by an unknown sports dude from Rogers. No, I'm just kidding. It's the new co-host of Drive Time, Blake Murphy, producer.
Blake Murphy.
Tuesday!
This the first one of the year? I guess we did a Thursday, right?
We did a
Blake
opener? Murphy Thursday, yeah, randomly.
With no drop.
With no drop, yeah, sorry. No, Derek
what does Derek do back there? He makes one drop for the whole season. And
he's chewing, man. He's having lunch.
He hit the Portuguese bakery before he came in.
Called Dench. Shout out once again.
Oh, granola bar. Thought he had that pop of shit.
All right, this is not the intro I wanted, but that's okay. Blake, how you doing, man? Welcome back to the show. People have missed you. Obviously, you know, the Blue Jays season ended prematurely, and so you were freed from Jays Talk Plus duties, and then, of course, you took some time off, which I think everyone was very happy to see because of the fact that you're the hardest working man in this city, not even just in sports media, and now you're back where you belong. Tuesdays with me. How you doing, man? How was your break?
I'm good, man. It was a good break. It was a short-ish break, but I got down to Cuba for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I see a little coloration.
Yeah,
you know?
I got to be real careful with the sunscreen because of these. You don't want to. Right. I don't want to have like old sailor tattoos. I mean, okay, they're tattoos. They're gonna look bad when I'm 50 anyway. But no, you want to be careful. So I don't know. It was nice though to get away for a couple days. I only missed 2 Raptors games. I just watched them on PVR when I got back. And
wow,
yeah, man.
That is one of the underrated things about going to Cuba is like you really get to disconnect just on purpose, like not even by choice.
What are you gonna do?
Just read books. Just go down there, read books, be outside, have you know.
I read 4 books while I was there.
Tips. Yeah,
which was great. Yeah,
nice.
Not enough Wi-Fi to really do any. Like I listened to the 2 World Series games on radio on my phone.
Okay,
but I didn't have. I couldn't get enough signal to watch them. I tried the first Raptors game. I was down there for the 2 Philly games. And I tried for the first one. It just wasn't worth it.
All right. That's enough baseball talk because for myself, I watched maybe 5 seconds of the World Series. Congrats, I guess, to the Astros. I guess they're just really good. With or without cheating, they're just really good, huh?
Yeah.
That's tough. So you win the title by banging some garbage cans, but then you win the title without the garbage cans.
Here's the thing.
It's a very interesting story.
In baseball versus basketball. Basketball, I think, of the major 4 North American sports, and you could probably throw soccer in there too. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like basketball is the one we're most certain that maybe the best team didn't win, but a really, really good team won.
Yes, always. Yeah.
Baseball, we don't get that as much. Hockey playoffs are pretty random. You run into a hot goalie or whatever, and we've seen statistically it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in the NHL playoffs. Baseball, you kind of have to look at like, okay, well, what has this team done over the last like 5, 6, 7 years? Like the Dodgers have made the playoffs 9 or 10 years in a row, set records for like the best record over multi-season spans, and they got 1 World Series in there.
Yeah, no, this is why I love basketball for that reason. Is like you have basically like 100 possessions offensively and 100% defensively, right?
It's just. There's justice in basketball.
Yeah. And then there's within each possession, you can have 0, 1, 2, 3, I guess 4 potentially, but realistically 0, 1, 2, 3 points. When you have that many flips of the coin, essentially, like you're really getting to a quality result at the end of the game. Yes, games will be close and be decided by some random things. You know, you have some cold nights here or there, but over the course of an 82 season, when you have like 200 possessions a game and you have such a, you know, distinct set of outcomes in each possession, like you're really going to get to who's the best team. And
I mentioned
this, then the playoffs is also 7 games too. So, you know.
And I mentioned this on air yesterday on the Fan Drive Time. And one of the things that really highlights how quickly and effectively basketball tells you who the good teams are is we're only 11 games in right now, so we're not there yet, but the NBA standings are pretty stable after 20 games.
Yeah.
Once we're 20 games in, you look at the net rating leaderboard, you look at who's in a playoff position, who's not, a little less so now with the play-in spots, but we know pretty early who's legitimate and who's not.
Utah Jazz, baby. Championship contender, Utah Jazz coming to a city near you.
I think that one will maybe fall off, but...
You know Danny Ainge is down bad. He's down so bad. He's like, I just tanked my whole team, and now we're the best in the West.
Yeah, Shams did that Lauri Markkanen interview today, and I was half expecting like midway through Shams to get the alert that Markkanen's been traded because Utah keeps winning too many games.
Oh, you know what? That's yeah, it's a surprisingly good story there. But you're right. Like basketball really does give you some pretty telling results, and I think for right now, the Raptors I think are top 10 in both offense and defense, which is nice to see. Of course, it really does help when they blow out 2 games by like combined 60 points. But
yeah, but a lot of these stats, like cleaning the glass, for example, will take that out, right? They'll eliminate the garbage time. So yeah, 2 blowouts in 11 games still affects things a lot, but you can still pretty confidently say, I think, that especially given the strength of schedule, that the Raptors have at least been a very good defense. 5th in defensive rating when you take out garbage time. 10th in offense is, I think, kind of on the upside of what we would have thought was possible for them.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. If you told me preseason that this is what's going to happen, I'd be thrilled.
Less so last night.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Less so last night because the Raptors lose 111-97 against the Bulls. This is one of those games where the game is over and, you know, if you're in media, you do your little recaps or you write your little column and then you just go to sleep and you wake up and you forget everything that happened. Like I really had to go through my notes and just be like, oh yeah, this play happened, this play happened. It was just such a bore, the game last night. And that's not to say that the Raptors didn't give effort. That's not to say that it wasn't like tactically, intriguing. It's just like the way the game played out. There's a lot of complaining in the third quarter to the officials. There was some conspiracy talk. We'll get to all of those. But realistically, it just didn't look like a game where the Raptors were going to be that competitive. I was looking at the stats after the game. The key categories for the Raptors, fast break points, they lost 16-13. You're not going to win any games.
It's got to be the first time that's happened this year, right? That they lost fast break?
Probably.
Or they certainly haven't won a game where they lost fast break points.
They definitely have not won a game where they have lost a fast break advantage. They also lost 11-4 in second chance points. Only 4 second chance points, which does sound pretty wild for the Raptors, who had 23 offensive rebounds against this exact same Chicago Bulls team on Sunday, but only had 3 through 3 quarters in yesterday's loss. They also lost 23-21 in points off turnovers as well. So, look, you're just not going to win a game like that. At least with the Raptors.
And I think the Bulls deserve some of the credit for that. I thought that the Raptors on the offensive glass was something that Chicago just straight up did a better job of. And we thought that maybe that would happen going into the first game. Nikola Vucevic historically has a pretty good on-off impact on what other teams are able to do on Chicago's glass, in part because they play that conservative style with him dropping back, especially when DeMar and Zach LaVine are on the perimeter. I thought they did a better job kind of scheming around that. I thought Vucevic had a much better game defensively in general, and that kind of keeps him in better positions for defensive rebounds. And then, the truth of it is the Raptors on Sunday played about as good a game as you can hope for them to play without Pascal Siakam. And the margins are really, really small when you're missing your best player, a guy who's been a top 5, top 10 player in the league so far this year.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big topic of conversation on today's show in terms of what some of the main players on the Raptors can be doing to sort of step up their production with Pascal out, because he's still going to be out for at least another 6-ish games.
And that's just before the next reevaluation. We don't know. This is the 3rd time he's had a groin thing. And we know that with an adductor strain, DeMar missed 19 games a couple years ago.
That. Also against Dallas.
We don't have a lot of detail beyond it's an adductor strain. We don't know, is it a rehashing of the earlier things that Siakam's had, because they've kept the details pretty quiet on that stuff. We don't know if 2 weeks is, hey, maybe he could come back after this, or maybe it's just a check-in. Not a lot of detail there, but you can certainly find precedent of adductor strains not being good things for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and it is such a shame because he was off to just an incredible start. Had clearly put in a lot of work into his game in the offseason and was, we've been having all these grand conversations, first team All-NBA type conversations. So hopefully Pascal's able to return soon. But in the meantime, though, it's just, as you mentioned, right, it is going to be a bit of a struggle for the team. You're going to have to win in the margins. Those are the margins. Fast break points, second chance points, points off turnovers. If the Raptors aren't winning at least 2 of the 3 of those, you're probably not going to see them win the game, mostly because offensively, it's been a struggle. Now, I think the other thing, too, just the topic of conversation coming out of yesterday's game was the fact that the Raptors, this is already the 3rd time they have played a set of back-to-backs against the same opponent. They played in Miami twice with the day off in between. they played Philly twice with a day off in between in Toronto, and now they played a home and home, a more traditional home and home, I guess, that you've seen in previous years with the Bulls. All three of those they have split 1-1. I have a theory in terms of why the Raptors may not necessarily be as effective in trying to win both of these two games. But I think I just want to get to the first overall conversation of like, are you a fan of these type of games? What are you seeing in terms of like, why are they doing this? What are the advantages to be gained? And also, I guess, what are some of the disadvantages to be gained from playing these sort of mini playoff series within seasons?
So this one is not the best example because it required travel. Like this one was there. First of all, the Raptors like to have Sunday home games. The Leafs generally have Saturday as a home game. You want one of those weekend crowds, if not two. And then the NBA wanted everyone playing yesterday as a league-wide push for the Get Out and Vote initiative with elections taking place in the U.S. today and the NBA off entirely. So this isn't the best example. We've seen home and homes like this forever in the NBA. The bigger thing that I would look at if you're trying to compare across teams is how many back-to-backs do you have overall? And the Raptors were right near the bottom of the league. They have the fewest in the league remaining, so you can feel good about that. Now, in terms of the two-game series against teams, this isn't the right example, but the Philly example and the Miami example, those are about limiting travel and cutting down on, well, if you fly to Miami and then fly back to Toronto and then fly back to Miami and then back to Toronto, and that's your 4-game set, that's a lot of extra travel versus play 2 here and then later we'll play 2 again.
Makes sense.
That is, when you look at the amount of miles teams are traveling this year, that has a positive effect. The Raptors actually travel significantly fewer miles the rest of the season than any other team in the league, in addition to having fewer back-to-backs from here. So there is a gain there, but I get the frustration because it's hard to grasp that, right? What we're trying to see is, okay, by April, the Raptors are in a little better shape in terms of cumulative load and cumulative fatigue than they may have otherwise been. They also, by the way, have 13 games left with a rest advantage versus 7 with a rest disadvantage. So the schedule, they're through the tough part of the schedule in terms of travel and logistics and stuff like that. Having said all that, I really like these 2-game sets. I think the small sample data we have over the last couple seasons as they've tried more of these says what I think a lot of people feel, which is it's hard to win 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So that's tough. If you are a team that's a borderline playoff team, maybe the Raptors end up in April, they're a game out of home court in the first round or something like that. And you look back at one of these and it's like, man, would have loved to have not played Chicago 2 in a row, could have thrown something different at them. Overall, though, I think these are the type of mini series that prepare you better for the playoffs. I think they're more interesting for people like us from a tactical perspective. I think we saw, yesterday's a great example of it, where Sunday, the Bulls just didn't really have an answer for the Raptors trapping DeMar DeRozan that aggressively. And sure, Zach LaVine coming back was a big part of how the Bulls handled that, but they also got much better operating in those 4-on-3s that happen underneath the trap. The Bulls made some defensive adjustments that the Raptors couldn't really counter. They didn't neutralize Koloko, but he was a lot less effective than he had been Sunday in the pick and roll with Fred VanVleet. So I think those things kind of sharpen you for what's to come if you're certain, like the Raptors are, that you'll be a playoff team. Now, it would be cool also if there was a third one now where you got to counter adjust to the adjustment. But I think, next time they play the Bulls or the Heat or the 76ers, that's one to look forward to, go back to what the first two look like. I think, maybe this is more on the coaching side than the player side, but I think it's going to have teams like the Raptors who play a bunch of these in better shape when it comes to what does a playoff series look like and feel like, and how do you have to make those adjustments on the fly?
Yeah. I think tactically it's definitely very interesting because, the traps at DeMar and stuff like that. I mean, they threw the book at DeMar both these games. DeMar had 20 in the first game, which was actually, when you think back on it, he only took 9 shots. He had like 3 or 4 and ones. He was throwing up a lot of just very impressive shots that were going in.
I know you weren't down there after the game because you had to do the post-game pod, but Nick Nurse tiptoeing around. I used that challenge 88 seconds into the game or whatever it was to send a message about DeMar's and ones. Of course he did.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, that's that's Nick finding another way to be creative once again because I believe it was something like 90 seconds into the game, Nick Nurse had already used his challenge. which has to be a record in the NBA for how quickly a coach's use is challenged. But going back to this idea, like for the Raptors, I think generally speaking, the way that Nick prepares his team and also the way Masai and Bobby build this team, it's a really weird construct, right? They don't fully make a lot of sense in terms of the traditional set. Like you're not looking at a team like Phoenix, for example, that has a point guard in Chris Paul, a shooting guard in, Devin Booker, a regular three, I guess they don't really have a regular four, but who in the league really has a regular four nowadays?
I mean, yeah, Cam Johnson's hurt now, but the Johnson Bridges, those guys are both 3-4 enough that you can get by with it anyway.
Fair enough. But it's like, the Raptors are obviously not like that, right? They have all the like-sized players. And then, of course, the way the Raptors like to play, they blitz you all the time. They throw all these sort of traps at you. They try to just break out in transition all the time. And I think that has it's harder to play this team on a random night than to play them back-to-back games the way that the Bulls were able to do that. Because, look, the Raptors were able to use their strategy and their formula to great success on Sunday, get the win, and everyone's feeling good. The next day, the Bulls just do everything you really need to do to limit the Raptors in terms of getting back in transition, in terms of we know where you're going to trap DeMar. Clearly, it worked really well in the first game. You're going to do it again. You're going to trap DeMar. Where's everyone else going to be? And then also the other adjustments in terms of the Raptors found Christian Koloko in the pick and roll for like 4 or 5 lobs in game one. Second game, not a single lob for Christian Koloko, right? So those kind of adjustments, I think the Raptors specifically and how weird they play is going to make it even harder for them to win one of these sets of back-to-backs. Is that also sort of what you're seeing as well in terms of just how opposing coaches can sort of handle and prepare against the Raptors?
For sure. And I don't even think it's just the coaches. I think from a player perspective, a big part of the Raptors' defensive strategy is make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And something that causes you discomfort, the more you get to look at it and play with it, the more, I mean, if you're Joel Embiid, you're still kind of figuring it out. But but for a lot of guys, that's, and this is part of where in a playoff series we've seen, or even there was a regular season, they had a 2-set against James Harden a couple years ago, and they significantly changed their approach to James Harden over 2 regular season games. Nick Nurse has that in him to mix up the coverages like that and keep teams guessing. I think at this point in the season, they probably have opted in those back-to-backs or those 2-game sets to stick with their core, like their foundational defensive identity, because we're only 11 games in, and we see with the bench usage and things like that, everyone's still kind of getting up to speed on it. Okay, so yeah. I would imagine, I know they have a couple of these down the stretch in the schedule as well. Maybe that's a case where they're throwing out, and maybe not. Maybe you run into a potential playoff opponent, you don't want to give much away, so you just play it straight. But if they're in, say late March, they have one of these and they're in let's prep for the playoffs mode, I could see them throwing 2 completely different coverages out there over 2 games just to see and just to, keep an opponent uncomfortable and keep your guys ready to adjust game to game against the same personnel too.
Yeah. And I also think the team that wins the first matchup is kind of at a disadvantage for the second matchup.
Well, it's what we've seen in all 3 of them, right?
Exactly.
Raptors lost the first one to Miami and then bounced back. And then Philly and Chicago, Raptors won the first one.
Yeah.
Other team won the second one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting for me, though. Like I even said before the season that looking at the schedule, obviously this is what stood out, these little mini baseball series, essentially. Yeah. And it's really cool to see the adjustments. Not so cool to not see them win back-to-back games, but it's okay. Fred VanVleet played really well last night. Had played really well the night before as well. 27 points for Fred in 34 minutes. A minor miracle that Nick resisted playing Fred close to 40 minutes in this game where they could have really used more Fred. But, Fred's been awesome, and I think he's been serving his role. But my bigger question is sort of like, okay, so with Pascal out for at least 2 weeks, what can each of the rest of the starters be doing to sort of improve the offense around them? And I think we have to start with Scotty Barnes, who has been a little bit underwhelming so far in the 2 games.
He certainly has. And just, to kind of set the picture here, big picture, without Siakam on the floor this year so far, not a surprise that they're much worse offensively. 10.3 points per 100 possessions. That's per cleaning the glass. So we're taking out garbage time here. We're not counting a Malachi Flynn, Jeff Doughton lineup at the end of a game. He played 6 minutes last night. Yeah. That is 11.2 points per 100 possessions in the half court. So it's even more pronounced in the half court. And because of Siakam's value defensively, and he's done a really good job on the defensive glass this year as well, the Raptors get out in transition 6% less like 6 percentage points less often without Siakam as well.
Right.
So you're seeing this in kind of every area of the offense. Now, last year, Siakam missed a bunch of time. We saw what that looked like, right? Chris Boucher, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, and to a lesser extent, Precious Achiuwa all saw their usage go up. Fred was the biggest one, but we saw OG go from like 19.5 usage to like 23.5 usage. The team, as you'd expect without their best player, the team's true shooting percentage dropped off without Siakam, but that is significantly bigger drop off so far this year. But you're right. I think Scotty Barnes is the big one. And the most curious stat, and again, tiny samples so far, but Scotty Barnes' usage is lower when Pascal's not on the floor so far this year.
Why is that? Is it just Pascal setting him up better?
I think maybe the chemistry between those two is a little further along. I think maybe because Siakam, especially when VanVleet was out, was taking on that kind of organize the offense responsibility. Whereas if it's OG or Gary Trent initiating, they're maybe not as naturally looking for Scotty Barnes and the places to get him involved, whether it's at the elbow or in the post or whatever. Some of this is going to fall to Fred to just kind of organize everyone. And then part of it might be in this small sample, Scotty Barnes' defensive role changes and he's not getting as many opportunities to grab and go and kind of initiate in transition maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that he didn't have a very good defensive game yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, listen, I think the ankle, first off,
yes.
Any conversation with Scotty in the last week or so has to be centered around that ankle because he just doesn't look right. We see him physically holding it sometimes. It's clearly something that's bothering him, right? So I wouldn't expect Pat Williams to always be blowing by him or anything like that. That doesn't really make sense to me. But I think offensively, what's been interesting this season with Barnes is that to me, it feels like he's gotten better at complementing the other guys, right? Better at knowing where to cut. And he already had a pretty good sense of this as a rookie, but getting even better in terms of where to cut when other guys are getting double teamed, when to sort of get in for a quick, duck in for a post up. He's hitting threes at a higher rate. You see a lot of catch and shoots for him now where Fred or whoever is driving into the paint and kicking it out, and Scotty's more willing to take those, and he's making more of those. So those are all good things for a piece that's complementary to the offense. But in terms of generating and directing the offense, I think that's where the initiative has to be even more from Scotty. Because to be honest, Pascal was initiating half of the team's offense, maybe more. So that's a huge gap made up. And to me, with the rest of the starters, sure, OG can take more shots, Gary can take more shots, but it ultimately comes down to Scotty has to initiate more. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he needs to shoot the ball every single time or he needs to record the assist every single time. But when you watch the game, you need to see him impacting the paint, drawing a double team, and then getting other guys open so that you can set the play in motion.
The one encouraging thing, and again, these are small sample numbers so far this year. Barnes has only played 127 minutes without Siakam. His assist points per 100 possessions. So the amount he's setting up teammates successfully does jump through the roof. So this is good. This is primarily his scoring efficiency drops off a cliff when we're talking almost 20 percentage points of true shooting. But he goes from 16 assist points per 100 to 26.
Right.
So that's a pretty good it at least looks statistically, the eye test is a little inconsistent, but it at least looks statistically that with Siakam out, Barnes is doing a solid job of the playmaking. And we saw that in his triple-double game, too, which Siakam only missed a chunk of, but that was clearly the way that one went. Triple-double, the assist on the OG buzzer beater.
That was the Rajon Rondo triple-double right there. No, but still, I think for Scotty, what's been a little bit annoying to watch in terms of my expectations is sort of I want to see him sort of create more, right? When it's sort of he's pulling up for these mid-range jumpers off the dribble and stuff like that, to me that seems like it's lacking a little bit of creativity, right? I think when you're thinking about whether that's creativity from Scotty's own end or creativity from the coaching staff, because his biggest advantage is in the post. Everyone's favorite play last night was him going at Alex Caruso, taking 4 or 5 power dribbles, and then just deciding, screw this, I'm just gonna go in and dunk it, and it was an amazing dunk. And then he had another play right after that where he went at Caruso. But what really stood out to me is those are the only 2 times it felt like last night where he impacted the paint, right? So I think to me it's the biggest gap right now, Pascal being out, you need somebody to be putting downward pressure at the hoop. Fred's doing it, but we know Fred gets blocked a lot because he's small, right? But Scotty needs to do it a little bit more, and the coaching staff needs to find better ways to sort of get him into those spots, because that's the only way, realistically, where you're able to generate a decent half-court offense with Pascal out.
And it might have to be as simple as 1 or 2 more times a game, Barnes kind of takes that attitude and goes inside, because
No, I'm 1 or 2 times more per quarter, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, no, not per game.
If
no.
Scotty Barnes tries to dunk on someone more often, no one on that coaching staff, no one in the fan base is going to be like, hey, man, you should do that less.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't work out, if he's trying to yam on guys and it just doesn't work out, I think everyone will be fine with that. But yeah, and this isn't just about the pressure at the rim. Obviously, that's an important component of opening up everything for your offense. But without Pascal Siakam, this team like dramatically can't get to the free throw line also.
Yeah.
And that's a problem when everything comes so hard for your offense in the half court. You don't get like, they're called free throws for a reason. I know they had 22 attempts last night, but for the most part, OG Anunoby, fewer free throw attempts when Siakam's not on the floor. Scotty Barnes, a little bit more, but barely any. So, like, we're talking less than...
He's averaging less than 2 free throw attempts per game, playing 31 minutes a game. That's for a guy who can dunk it like that doesn't make sense.
And he's stronger than everyone.
Right.
It's like maybe sometimes he gets... I think there was one call last night. He got the kind of the OG call of, well, you're just stronger than the guy defending you, and it looks like you mauled him. But
the officiating wasn't great last night.
Sure.
A lot of shots of Eric Lewis on the broadcast.
Yeah, welcome to the NBA.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so that's the Scotty portion. I think Fred is already doing his thing. We don't really need to cover it. I mean, if Fred gave you like, he's had 30 and then 27.
Yeah, 57 points and I think 15 assists over the 2 games Siakam's missed.
Yeah, so literally he can't do anything more.
Also, by the way, he's still wearing like the Kyle Lowry championship belt back massager thing. Remember when Lowry would have back issues and he'd wear like the cummerbund to heat up his lower back and stuff? Fred's doing this while still wearing that.
He really is Kyle's protege, man. In every single way, he's like, "Oh, Kyle had a bad back at this age. Me too." You know.
Wait until Fred takes up golf.
Oh man. Honestly, he does seem like a guy who would kind of like it. But in any case, we'll see. We'll see if he starts taking up dissing Josh Lewenberg as well in the pressers. Okay, but OG and Gary, the other 2 starters. I guess Koloko's starting in place right now. Realistically, we know what Koloko can do. Just try to finish more of your layups and dunks, right? But OG and Gary, those 2 guys, do you want to see OG initiate more?
Yes.
In Pascal's absence?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a yes.
And part of it is because I think that now some of this doesn't come through statistically over the years because of his role, but OG is like a pretty natural playmaker, not run a pick and roll and pick out a teammate. But when it comes to finding cutters or improvising in the middle of a play, he's really good at that stuff. And I think the Raptors have tried a little bit to get OG moving off the ball and becoming a weapon away from the ball. Like there was the one play 2 nights ago where he came off kind of the elbow down screen or the elbow step up screen and got the lob.
Right, off the timeout. Yeah, I think Koloko found him high low.
I think they're trying to do a little bit more of that stuff. It's tough because, like, I think he's pretty conscious of not commanding too much. And this is where, you can't, I don't think you can really tell him and Gary at the same time, hey, you both need to initiate more, because those are just 2 guys that are used to being play finishers for the most part. But I do think OG has, after Fred and Scotty, the most natural playmaking instincts of guys that are in the rotation. So I wouldn't mind the ball being in his hands a little bit. It's just the ISO scoring just hasn't come along at all. So you got to get a little more creative with it, with some of those, Iverson play types, like the cut across the free throw line around a couple screens and initiate from an advantageous point instead of kind of one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is just because people wonder that all the time. It's pretty obvious. You're just watching it. Like he turns the ball over a lot on his drives, whether that's charges, whether that's losing this control of the ball, whether that's getting stripped. Like it just doesn't seem to have the dexterity or the coordination to always finish some of those drives. But to me, it's just like no matter what, like obviously you're still going to need somebody to initiate some of those plays, right? Like for most sets, you would have to have one primary ball handler, which Fred's able to give you right now, one secondary ball handler, which ideally OG and Gary can, serve those roles. And then hopefully Scotty can be closer to primary than secondary, right? And just so you can mix and match the lineups, because genuinely speaking, the rest of the lineups don't really have that. You're going to need the ball in OG's hands to create for you, and I do trust him. but at the same time, he's just got to limit the turnovers. Like,
Mhm.
is there one thing that's standing out to you in terms of just like can he cut down? Because right now he's driving 7 times a game and he's turning over 1.1 times on those 7 drives.
Yeah.
That's like a six of the drives or seven of the drives literally are going as turnovers,
And yeah, if you look at just like kind of
and they're live ball too.
one-on-one isolation plays, he's only been credited with 10 isolations this year, 3 turnovers. That's a 30%
Yeah.
quick math there. 3 out of 10 is 30%. That's a big
This is
it's
why
a
you're
big
the,
rate.
this is why you're the numbers guy. No,
Yeah.
but seriously though, like that and an isolation should be a play where you really have a low turnovers
The
on
whole
isolation.
it's the
play.
whole point.
Yeah, you're literally not passing on the play.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think some of this is still the handle. Some of this is still recognizing at this point. Like, I know OG's still young-ish and he wants to expand his game, and the Raptors want to give him the freedom to do that a little bit. But year 6,
Mhm.
I think maybe at least in spots like last night where the team just really needs something. Like if you're up 15 and you want to improvise and kind of freelance some offensive stuff and have the runway to do that from the coaching staff, awesome. A night like last night, it's more of a, well, we got to trim off the stuff that we know doesn't work very
Yes,
well
you gotta
or
be
doesn't
very
work right
efficient.
now. And I don't know how much of that is. I don't think OG is like unilaterally deciding that. He only took 12 field goal attempts last night and was the only guy who could get to the line.
Yeah,
So I don't want to be critical of him. I just mean moving forward over this next little bit. Like, I don't see a reason why OG can't be, 18, 19 point a game guy with Pascal Siakam out.
yeah. Okay. And then lastly, Gary, what can Gary be doing more?
I mean, he can always be passing more, but he had 4 assists last night, which is
Yo, that might be a career high. I'm gonna look into it.
yeah, like a
Um,
family record 4 assists.
oh come on, man. No, Gary Trent Sr. is in the studio
I know,
somewhat regularly.
I
now,
know. It
so he
was
was a walking triple double. That
yeah,
man.
it was a season high at
Mhm.
least for Gary Trent.
Okay.
No, I think I don't think Gary's role actually changes that much. I think
Okay. Yeah. Same. Just watching it, he's not playing differently. Yeah.
yeah, and it can maybe even help Gary Trent in some cases if Christian Koloko looks like he does Sunday and is a pick and roll threat for Fred VanVleet, because that's going to bring a tagger over, and
Yeah.
that's going to leave, maybe it's OG Anunoby that it's in the corner, but maybe it's Gary Trent or maybe, Gary Trent finds opportunities to kind of lift out of there and get into his one dribble against a scattered defender kind of stuff. I
Mhm.
don't think Gary's role changes a ton. I just
Fair.
think he should have about the same diet of shots. It's just the usual Gary stuff of don't do too much, like do the
Right.
Gary Trent roll card things.
Yeah, I mean, it with him, it's interesting because it's just like if he's hot, the ball's gonna find him more,
Mhm.
and if he's not, the Raptors probably don't find him as much, and Nick probably doesn't play him as much. So Gary's Gary, regardless of who's on the floor. I actually really love that quality about him. A lot
That
of other
is-
players are context dependent, not Gary.
It's look, that can be a problem. Like the old Boston Red Sox thing of, oh, that's just Manny being Manny. And the point of that is, well, he does so many good things that you look past the odd
Yeah,
time he
sure.
does a goofy thing. I think there is some usefulness to knowing exactly how a guy is going to play and exactly how, like Gary Trent Jr., you don't really have to worry about what lineup he's out. If the ball comes to him, he'll shoot it.
Yeah.
And you'll have some spacing in those lineups. It's just, yeah, you should probably play him in lineups where someone can actually pass to him. That's
Yeah,
all.
that's
What I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe we can save it for the bench side because it's Thad related. So
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. We're gonna tease more Thad Young talk on the other side of this break. No, but seriously, we will talk about the bench as well. Always diving into everything basketball, Toronto Raptors related with Blake Murphy. So I'm your host, Willu. You're listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, William Lou. Continue to be joined by Blake Murphy. And, okay, so we teased Thad Young talk before going to break, which I don't know how many people were staying in their cars to listen for more Thad Young talk. They said, ooh, maybe I won't pay for parking right now. Maybe
you see how active Mrs. Thad Young is on Raptors Twitter during games? She's stayed locked in for this one for sure. Okay. Especially if we're going to advocate for more Thad Young minutes.
Well, this is what we're going to do right here. We're going to advocate for more Thad Young minutes. Yeah. Okay, so first and foremost, the bench usage this season, I think Nick has more options to use off the bench, which has been nice. I thought that a good example of that was on Sunday when Precious and Gary were just really underperforming. They were able to turn to Thad and Otto to essentially play the same roles but be more consistent, those guys being vets and stuff like that. So I think Nick has more options off the bench than last year, which is actually hard to, not accomplish based on how bad the bench was last year. But I still am curious in terms of how Nick wants to use the bench, though, because to start the fourth quarter last night, the lineup on the floor, and whatever, the Raptors were down somewhere in between 10 and 20 points. It's not like a complete, no chance at a win there, probably like a 5% chance at a win. But in any case, to start the fourth quarter, the Raptors open with Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, OG Anunoby, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and Precious Achiuwa. There is no way that Nick Nurse and his coaching staff came up with that at any given point other than at the start of the fourth quarter. They're like, let's just throw these guys out there and see what happens. My point is, though, like the bench is being used in a way that, doesn't feel optimal, doesn't feel productive. The Raptors bench hasn't been that productive in general anyway, outside of Chris Boucher, who finally had one bad game yesterday, and the whole bench just kind of cratered with him. So, so I guess my question, we'll start here. Who should be the 6, 7, 8, 9 when everyone's healthy?
Do you want to see some charts?
Let's see. Okay.
Do you want me to turn my computer around again?
Blake, come on, man. Yeah, do your thing.
No, I won't. But I will say that PBP stats tracks, how often a team plays and how well a team plays with certain number of starters on. Raptors, by far the best team in the league when they have 4 starters on the floor, and they do that pretty frequently.
Right.
One of the best teams in the league when they have 3 starters on the floor. So as long as 3 of those regular starters are on the floor, the Raptors are in pretty good shape. So once you get down to 2, sometimes even 1, now they don't do 1 very often, but with fewer than 3 starters on the floor, the Raptors are the worst team in the league.
Oh, okay, great.
And it's not particularly close.
Oh, man.
So that's where you're talking about.
That's so tough.
2 starters on the floor is manageable, right? Like you can come up, say you only had 8 guys that you trusted. You can come up with a rotation pattern that keeps 2 guys on the floor at all time. So you have one of Fred and Pascal and one of Scotty Barnes and OG on the court at all times, say. You can do that. But when you get down to, you have to have a 3rd guy with that. So it's like, okay, one of those groups needs Gary, and then one of those groups needs, one guy from the other side, like Siakam's got to play extra minutes or Fred does. That gets really tough. And then, that's like playoff thinking, right? Like, if the rotation is going to go down to 7 or 8, who has the most utility in this specific matchup? And that's a different conversation than who has the most utility over 82. So I'd say unquestionably, Chris Boucher is number 6.
Yes,
he's been
absolutely
their best bench player. He has not his best game yesterday.
I mean, it was pretty bad yesterday. Yeah.
But generally, he has been really, really good.
Yeah.
You see that for the 2nd year in a row. That bears out in the advanced stats. That bears out in the counting stats. However you chop it up, Boucher has been their best bench player so far.
Yeah. Even I don't complain about Chris anymore.
Yeah, well, that's for other reasons.
That's the biggest step.
Once he said Blake Murphy Tuesday, then he was good in your books.
No, but Chris Boucher being a Raptor Show stan was a development I didn't see coming. He's like, yeah, man, I watched your show. I know Blake Murphy Tuesday. So I was like, what? Oh, wow. Okay, we got to be friends now.
Okay. You guys be friends. I would say the next person up, and this is not based on how they're playing right this second. This is based on, and this is, I guess, where if we're talking 82 games versus if we're talking the next game, this changes. Because I actually think with Siakam out and with the starting lineup the way it is right now, Thad Young should be playing more minutes because Thad Young's most useful when he's playing alongside other starters. Like you wouldn't do this because Chris Boucher and Precious Achiuwa and Christian Koloko have roles and need to continue developing and stuff, but say one starter came out and you had 5 minutes to win and that was it. Like 5 minutes, this 5 minute stretch got you Wemby if you win these 5 minutes. and one starter's out, Thad Young is probably the guy who best fits with the starting five dropped in there. That hurts your rotations the rest of the game. It doesn't take development stuff into account. But Thad is such a multiplier and dot connector that you drop him in with better players, he's going to have even more of an impact.
Yes.
So I would say right now, while Siakam's out, Thad Young should be playing a little more. Even last night, you saw he didn't take a field goal attempt, but he had 3 assists like right away.
Yeah. Though they just put him in the post. First off, okay, so it allows some of the Raptors' other guys like Fred, like OG, like even Gary, to just be scoring off ball. They don't have to they don't have to have the ball, break down the first defender, maybe break down a second defender, draw a third defender, kick out, all that stuff. You just give it to Thad in the post. Guys can work off the ball. You can have off ball screening and stuff like that. It just organizes the offense. And plus you can trust him to actually serve his role on a consistent basis. Obviously he's not as athletic as some of the other guys anymore, but he's in the right spaces most of the time. He could take a charge here or there. Like, he's just very good. I don't understand why Nick didn't play him early in the season.
I mean, there are a lot of power forwards to get minutes for, and some of them are younger, and I don't really have a good answer for it, but I'd say with Siakam out, it's pretty straightforward, and you saw even a tiny bit these last 2 games. The Bulls didn't do it as much as maybe I would have expected, but if teams start zoning the Raptors up more because they can't do much without Pascal Siakam in the half court, Thad's kind of your most natural zone buster as a playmaker as well, right? The guy to flash to the middle. Now, you want to get Scotty Barnes and OG reps doing that so they get used to it too.
That's fine, but we're talking about the bench right now.
Yeah.
Those guys aren't usually in with the bench.
Yeah. So I think right now while Pascal's out, that has more of a role. Now, a bigger picture, like over the long haul, Precious Achiuwa is eventually going to have to play more. He's eventually going to have to play better, but I haven't really thought he's been bad defensively. He's back to the field goal percentage being criminally low.
Yeah, okay. Where do we stand with Precious right now? I think we've seen Nick eat a lot of his minutes and give those to Koloko.
Yeah.
Raptors obviously
shooting 40% from the floor as a center. Like you can understand going away from it when it's not going well. But I
feel like Christian's also in the 40s for percentages. But at least Christian only takes the right shots in the sense that he's only just trying to do a layup.
He's shooting 42.5%, so narrowly better than.
Man, we might have the least efficient centers in the league.
Tell you what, I will not bring up the percentile ranks among centers for those field goal percentages at the rim. I just won't do that to you guys.
Yeah, that's tough. Christian denying shots at both ends of the floor at the basket, but seriously though, it's. I think that's where Nick has another option as compared to last year, right? Last year, Precious got the start at center. And he got several starts. Nowadays, it's Christian who's getting those starts now. Christian has started like 6 out of the Raptors' first 11 games here. Had he not been drafted, probably would have been Precious in this kind of role. Do you think Precious having to play more exclusively with the bench rather than taking some time with the starters is hurting his efficiency a little bit, maybe?
Maybe, but it shouldn't be, right? Like if you're...
Yeah, I agree.
I get that there's a component of it that, well, you're playing with slightly lesser players and maybe those guys don't know how to get you in the ball in your spots as well, but you're also playing against bench bigs. And you are playing as part of a defensive unit that's all about chaos and transition. And we know the Achiuwa-Boucher duo works really well together when we get enough of a sample with it. So I don't really know. I don't think that... I don't think playing more bench minutes is why he's shooting 40%. I think he's missing a lot of shots.
Yeah. And also the 3-ball has not come around for him.
Right.
He feels like he's making more free throws at least, which is nice. But
I owe him an apology, by the way. I did just look it up. He's actually shooting 73% at the rim this year. It's just everywhere else he's not hitting shots.
Awesome. Well, you got to start somewhere.
Baby steps.
This is the least favorite question, but I probably asked you this very same question at least 4 or 5 other times on Blake Murphy Tuesdays.
Is it about Malachi Flynn?
No, it's I guess it is actually. Can either Malachi or Delano actually contribute? The Raptors' second unit. I can't believe I'm looking at Goran Dragic with the Bulls and I'm like, damn, they could really use that. Why are we having the same combo now? But seriously, those 2 guys, neither of them have done anything in their spot.
So I do wonder if there's a little bit of a disconnect maybe between front office and coaching staff when it comes to Malachi Flynn, them picking up his option and not addressing the point guard depth at all in the offseason. I get they're committed.
Come on, Jeff Dowden Jr., baby.
He's been the best 905 player so far through 2 games. Home opener on Thursday, by the way, in Mississauga.
That's right. You gonna be there?
No, because I'm on the air till 7 now.
Oh, okay.
I can't get out to Mississauga that quickly.
It's a very good excuse. A very, very good excuse.
And they don't have a weekend or afternoon home game until the new year, except for the one at Scotiabank Arena.
Fair enough.
So I'll get one 9:05 game in before the new year.
No, you got to go see your boy Eric Corey, man. You know,
The king of halftime adjustments, down 24 at half the other in the opener, or down 24 in the first half or something. They come back and win.
damn.
Unbelievable.
Did the numbers tell him that? No, I'm kidding. It's so funny how we just pigeonhole these people.
Yeah.
He's a fully fledged head coach. Anyway, whatever. We'll talk about that another time. So Malachi and Delano. Which one of these guys? Come on, now.
Look, Fred VanVleet was out, and neither of them played a role really, and I think that tells you a lot. And I think that not only Fred VanVleet was out, and they didn't really play a role. If you're looking at Malachi Flynn specifically, that first game against Chicago, where they play a pretty exclusively a drop coverage with Nikola Vucevic, and they are willing to give your point guards the pull-up mid-range jumper.
And they have lots of guards for him to guard. Like,
that's a Malachi Flynn game. Yeah, he can guard Caruso the other way down the floor, or Dragic, and then
even Javonte Green. Like, there's lots of places to hide him.
Like a lot of the Malachi Flynn stuff over the first 2 years and change has been, there's a misalignment in what that guy is and what the scheme is, right? Like, he is not first of all, defensively, he's more of a conservative. Like, him and Delano are polar opposites in terms of defensive style, right? Like, Delano is getting into a guy, using his length, fighting over every screen, making mistakes, but also poking a lot of balls free. Yeah. Malachi Flynn is a sit back, be a little more conservative, play smart positionally, concede that jumper, but that's a low percentage shot, and we'll get the defense to go. Right. And that doesn't really fit. And then at the other end, Malachi Flynn is not like a push in transition, play at a frenetic pace guy. In college, he was one of the best pick and roll orchestrators in college basketball.
Sure.
And now he's on a team that
never plays
at least last year ran the least pick and roll in all of basketball.
Yeah.
I do wonder, could he develop some sort of chemistry with Koloko when Koloko eventually moves back to the bench? Because that's a natural pick and roll point guard and a pick and roll big. But I don't know. I just don't think they're going to force minutes his way at this point. Like, if he didn't play when VanVleet's out, and he didn't play against a drop heavy team where there's obvious guys for him to guard, I don't know what the situation is where he gets into more playing time. I do think that it would help, and I don't know that it would help the performance, but it would at least help the evaluation. It would help the coaching staff, I think, if instead of Flynn plays 6 minutes, Delano plays 8 minutes, Flynn plays 8 minutes, Delano plays 4 minutes or whatever.
The first half, second half, guys get a turn approach.
Pick one guy, ride with it for a little bit, live with the bumps, and then
do that with Delano though. They kind of picked Delano at the start of the year, and then they
right. But Flynn didn't get his.
Okay, all right. So you're saying it's Flynn's turn to get.
I'm not advocating for a ton of Malachi Flynn minutes. Right. I just think if you are eventually going to find some backup point guard minutes, like, you picked up Flynn's option for next year, at some point you got to see if he can give you backup minutes.
Yeah. It's tough, man.
Or not. Maybe it's just Fred and a bunch of 6'9" guys, and they just really, really believe in not needing an extra pair of hands with the bench.
Big picture, when we look ahead to the trade deadline, the big picture ideal trade is to get that star, first name Kevin, last name Durant, kind of thing. The little picture stuff, if you're going to just try to add more pieces to the bench the way the Raptors have been steadily doing with adding Thad last year and then signing Otto, both, I think, pretty good pickups, please find that guard. Like
Eric Gordon.
Eric Gordon?
Expiring contract on the Rockets, $21 million, so you can almost get there money-wise with, like, Kem, Thad, and a lower salary piece.
Okay, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but I'm watching the Rockets Magic game like a lunatic the other day.
What are you watching that for, man? The only person watching that game should be Victor Wembanyama.
And it's like, Eric Gordon and Terrence Ross both having good games, both pending free agents, both shooting guards with real three-point range. Both can handle just a tiny bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, listen, I'm not asking for that much. I just do think they need one more bench guard. I think the Raptors know that, obviously. Like, the trade talks, obviously, there were interest in Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
He would have been a great piece when I was watching. Because every single game I watched, I'm like, oh, Dallas. Ooh, who'd be nice off the Raptors bench? Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah. I'll put $5 down right now that we will hear at some point this year, once again, Raptors interested in Miles Turner. Because that'll come up again as well.
No, because Raptor fans click. At the end of the day, no matter what, Raptor fans will click on your content.
They will.
So, Miles Turner. Once
I do think I'd be looking more in the backcourt, like someone who can handle a little bit and score a little bit, put some pressure on the rim, hit some three. I think Eric Gordon is like, obviously that's not the top tier of guy, but if you're talking about skill and role fit that you could find your way to the money working without giving up one of your core pieces, I think that's going to be on the higher end of what you're looking at.
I've been throwing Jakob Poeltl and Doug McDermott at people just as a combo trade package with the Spurs, maybe address a little bit. But I don't think he fully fits in this discussion. But listen, we'll have lots of time to talk about that.
In that Spurs game, I saw a number of people tweeting like, Doug McDermott's still here, like he's still. He just pops up. Man? He only plays against the Raptors. That's the thing.
All right, we've run out of time. That does it for us today. I'm your host, Willu. You've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. Thanks again to Blake Murphy, our board producer, Derek Brandeo, and Jennifer Olnick for helping us with the YouTube stream. I'll be back to talk here tomorrow.